At this time, I want to invite you to join in a moment of silence, followed by...
If I may point of order, may I ask that our meditative thought this afternoon be in memory of the 4-year-old little Miss Maya Kaufman, and that we adjourn this meeting in memory of the former Sumter School District 2 Chairwoman Naomi Sanders, if there's no objection from this body.
Any objection? Hearing none, so ordered. With that being said, at this time, I want to invite you to join in a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Please keep in mind the request from our chairperson, not chairperson, but our board member, Mr. Brian Alston. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome to the Sumter School District February 22nd, 2021 Board of Trustees meeting work session. All persons wishing to attend the virtual meeting may do so via YouTube, Sumter School District Board Meetings, and Sumter School District Facebook page. Due to COVID-19 and in compliance with recent public health orders, no members from the public will be able to attend the meeting in person. This meeting is held in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act. The news media has been notified, and a copy of the agenda has been made available to the public. The mission of Sumter School District is to equip students to be responsible, successful, and productive citizens in a global society. Vision. The Sumter School District develops and cultivates competitive students who embrace diversity, act responsibly, and contribute positively to society. Your board members are Barbara Jackson, yours truly, Area 7 Chairwoman, J. Frank Baker, Seat 8, Vice Chairman, Darrell McGaney, Area 5, the Clerk, Brian Alston, Area 1, Cheryl Ray, Area 2, Mac McLeod, Area 3, Johnny B. Hilton, Area 4, Gloria Rose Lee, Area 6, Sean T. Reagan, Area 9, Robin Mills, Deputy Director of Installation Support, Shore Air Force Base Representative. Dr. Penelope Martin Knox is our Superintendent, and Amy Hanson is our Administrative Manager. I call this meeting to order. And good evening, and I'd like to thank you for joining us for this work session of the Board of Trustees. We truly appreciate your attendance. Our next item is on the agenda is agenda approval. Upon a consensus and with no objection, the agenda will stand approved as written. Are there any objections? Hearing none, the agenda is approved. Roman numeral 3 is board communication. And our 3.1 is the announcement. At this time, I invite trustees to share any announcements that they may have. And I will go and provide the first announcement. I'd just like to announce that members of the board attended the South Carolina Board Association Annual Conference in Hilton Head from February 18th through the 22nd. And persons that were in attendance was J. Frank Baker, Dara McGaney, Cheryl Ray, Brian Alston, Gloria Lee, Sean Reagan, as well as yours truly. The training began on Wednesday, and that was on lessons in leadership, and that was for the board chairs, and Dr. Baker also accompanied me. And there was a full day of skill building sessions to enhance our leadership skills, manage effectively meetings, and important state laws. And Dr. Baker, at this time, would you like to add anything to that?
Yes, I would. Thank you. It was a good conference, and that first day was dedicated to chairman, vice chairman, and superintendents. So it was a mixture of those folks at that one, and it was hard to decide which may have been the better of the workshops and the opportunities that were afforded. But the one that I wanted to mention to the board, this one, the core work of highly effective school boards, and the presenter was Tony Agrassi. And I do have a copy, and all the board members may have this, but I do have a copy of the PowerPoint and the presentation actually for that entire day. But that one really stood out, and it was so good to get new information, but it was good to reaffirm that what we're doing as a school board ties in with many of the things that he was saying needed to be done for a school board to be highly effective. So it just reinforced the things that we're doing to hear him, and he's a national presenter. And there were some other ideas given too that could even enhance our effectiveness even more.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Baker. And on Thursday through Sunday, the core work of highly effective school boards was a topic for those sessions, and the others attended those, and we also attended full time, but the other members attended these. And at this time, I'd like to see whether or not they would like to have the opportunity to share. And the one thing, let's do this. If someone else has shared that point, let's make another point and just go around and share it that way.
Yes, ma'am, Madam Chair. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank my colleagues for allowing me to attend the conference down there. It was very rewarding, very fruitful, numerous topics. The topic that stood out the most with me was living by the golden rule, understanding implicit bias, and respecting diversity to benefit all of South Carolina's children. That particular session was very helpful. It was storytelling, listening to some of the stories that the presenters shared. It was inspiring, and it left me with the impression, or it challenged all of our teachers to get to know the children that they are working with, because you don't know their story, you don't know their background. It's easy to pretty much judge a book by its cover, but you cannot judge a book by its cover if you don't know, if you have not walked in their shoes. And so I was very inspired by that presentation, and I would challenge my colleagues or anyone else to that presentation was very great, and I would challenge everyone to read up on that, and I'll yield to the rest of my colleagues for the rest of the conference. But I wanted to share that point, that takeaway for me, personally.
Thank you. Ms. Ray?
There were a lot of really good sessions that we had, but two things that I gathered that made an impression on me. One was from the South Carolina Teacher of the Year. She gave a wonderful speech to us, and one thing she implored on board members to, as we're setting policy, to consider the social and emotional needs of the children and what teachers are having to do, and that they are doing instruction, but right now that is not the most important thing. And I thought that was a very good point. And then the last speaker made a point of something I think we all know, but because of the COVID quarantine and the way we've done school, that things are never going to be the same. But her point was that some things don't need to be the same, that this is a good opportunity for us to look at things differently and try to do things better and, you know, sort of start fresh. So I thought that was a good positive thing that we could look at coming from the quarantine.
Thank you. Ms. Ray? Yes?
Madam Chair, to echo the sentiments of Reverend Reganey on the Golden Rule, I agree that it was a great session, and I think it will be helpful as we move forward with an equity policy for the district. But I also attended the Educational Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion workshop that gave a great presentation on how to look at educational equity, diversity, and inclusion, and how equity has a profound impact on the student achievement and how we can close that achievement gap through the work of equity. Also, I attended the Building Equity for English Learners, and I wanted to attend this workshop in particular as I saw at our last board meeting from the state report card, we were just below the state average when it came to our English language learners. And it gave us some really good points as board members how we can assist in closing that achievement gap as well. And I have one other announcement that's not conference related, but on the 16th of this month, I had the opportunity to join a Google Meet with the Rafting Creek Elementary School's Title I parent meeting, and got a chance to interact with the great staff there, the students and community members. And I just wanted to give a shout out, personal shout out to my Rafting Creek Lions, to let them know that I miss their faces and I miss their classroom engagement. And as soon as I have the opportunity, I would definitely love to come back and visit with them at this time. That concludes.
Thank you. That's it.
Good evening, everyone. I too, for my first time, I truly enjoyed the entire training that we attended. One of the classes, which all of them were great for me and they were very, very empowering, was one that was taught by a leadership class by Anton Gunn. And when he spoke about how to make those things that were right and becoming a leader and being a leader in everything that we do and respecting others along the way, being able to understand that we can't change everything in one day and that it all takes time. And throughout this COVID process, it's going to take a lot of time for us to adjust going back to school, and it's not going to be an overnight process, but that we need to respect other people's opinions and their views and to observe the things that we are getting ready to attack and to be mindful of how we address the things as we go from day to day. All the classes were good, and I got a little bit of something out of each and every one of them, but that kind of like, stuck with me. And everyone pretty much said that in their own way, but it's just the way that he really brought it out.
Thank you. Okay.
I'm last. Okay.
I'm not saying
Can I say that because
you're not last.
Well, I'm not last. Who's next?
Of course not.
Oh, well, anyway, I say that because everything that I have written on my paper, you all have already said. But just to echo what you've already mentioned, the conference was very good. Overall, it was planned well in terms of safety. I think I got my temperature checked about 100 times. So I know I didn't have a fever. So overall, it was planned well. Some of the same sessions that you guys attended, I also attended. I took a lot of notes. And so I'm willing to share that with the board as well, or the superintendent and the staff if you would like. But there were two that stuck out to me. One being the educational equity that I believe you mentioned earlier, you and Brian. And I also attended the ESOL one that had a plethora of information. And so I'm interested to know in the future from our district, because Horry County did that presentation. And so they did an awesome job, and they are excelling when it comes to that particular program. And they have had visits that they mentioned from the Department of Justice, I believe. So I'm interested to know where we stand as a district when it comes to ESOL. Other than that, we had a really good time, and I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you all board members that were able to attend. Thank you for your sharing, and I thought it was easier for us to just go around round robin and everyone give some points rather than everyone trying to cover everything at one time. And I appreciate your saying that safety guidelines were strictly adhered to and followed. So I think even so much so that some of the attendees are now saying that they feel safe enough to go out and start doing some workshop again. So that's something that we can look forward to. And I will say that if anyone is interested in the handouts, if we don't have what you need, you may go on go online to scsba.com, and that will pop up, and you can print out your handouts, or you can just sit there and read it leisurely if you want to. But if you want any of what we have, we're willing to share that with you at any time. Just let us know. So I'd like to thank, on behalf of all of us, I'd like to thank the district for seeing fit to afford us the opportunity to travel for the first time since I don't know when, but for a great opportunity that was afforded us. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Does anyone have any other communication to share at this time? Yes, Dr. Lee?
While we were down there, Dr. Jackson failed to say that she was one of the winners on yesterday. Mr. Sean Reagan was the first person that they called to win. And so I'm glad to see that Sumter had some kind of kudos in the house for winning on yesterday.
Oh, thank you. Anyone else? No other communication to share? Okay, then we're down to, oh, I have one other that I'd like to, I do have something else I'd like to share. I'd like to share that on March 2nd, we have a board, March 1st, we have Dr. Tiffany Richardson coming for a work session. And she is going to be here, and I'm sure she will be doing some follow-up on some of the same things that we were enlightened about this past weekend. So if you have anything that you would need or want her to cover when she's with us, please give me the information or the questions of whatever you might want to have her make sure she include in her presentation. You know that she is she's the director of policy and legal services, and she's been with us before, and she's coming back with us. You know, we said that we wanted to do work sessions, and this is one of our continued efforts that we're going to be doing. Thank you so much.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I do have one additional announcement. I just wanted to say, there was a lot of conversation amongst board members with other districts. And one of the things that I was proud of was to hear other districts talk about the work that our superintendent is doing here in Sumter. And I told them, don't get any ideas because we're not letting her go. But just to hear other districts talk about our superintendent in the way that they did really makes me proud to be a member of this board and to be able to work with her. So I just want to say kudos to Dr. Martin Knox.
One additional to that, not just board members, but Scott Price and some of the colleagues for the School Board Association really spoke highly of Dr. Martin Knox. And I felt I was proud to hear how they really gave her props. That was really good. Glad to hear that.
Yes, everyone knows her, I'll tell you that. I don't know whether it's what impact and how, but I think that everyone gives her credit for being knowledgeable and being involved. And really a go-to person. And that really speaks volume that, you know, she's not from this area, but this is her home and she has made it a part of her and it is her now. So, yeah, we will say that you don't get any ideas because you're not going anywhere and like they say, they told them, don't even think about it. Okay, and thank you all for sharing that as well. All of us need to have our kudos and encouraging words from time to time, so we do appreciate that. Okay, we're now down to 3.2. The committee reports. At this time, I will invite the chairman of our committees to make remarks and make your reports. The first on here is the Citizen Advisory. We're in the process of compiling the list of nominees, which we hope to have finished in the very near future. If you have not provided your name, please do so like yesterday. We need to move on and get that committee finalized. So we will move on from there. The Facilities Committee, Mr. Reagan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At this time, we have a tentative meeting that is scheduled for March the 3rd at 6 o'clock p.m. here at the district office. So at this time, we do not have a report tonight.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sean Reagan. Our Finance Committee, Mrs. Ray.
No report at this time.
No report at this time, okay. Our Policy Committee,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Alston.
The only announcement I have for this evening is that the policy committee will meet on March the 2nd at 6 p.m. here at the district office.
Okay. And our Transportation Ad Hoc Committee, Dr. Bailey.
No report at this time.
Okay, no report. All right, thank you. We're now down to 3.3, our legislative update, and at this time, I want to welcome our board legislative contact, Dr. Johnny Hilton, to provide the legislative update.
Thank you, ma'am. We all received an email today, this afternoon, and all this information I'm gonna share with you is in the email in much more detail. And I'm only gonna hit a few highlights, and there's many, many bills that are passing through the legislature, mostly in committee or subcommittee at this time. But those of particular note is there's a House subcommittee considering a bill to change the elected state superintendent to one appointed by the governor. This coming Thursday, the House Judiciary Constitutional Law Subcommittee will consider a bill giving the voters a chance to vote on a constitutional amendment in November of 2022 to make the state superintendent of education an appointed position to be appointed by the governor. You may recall that back in 2018, there was a similar chance to vote on a constitutional amendment for this very same reason, and 60% of the South Carolina voters said no to a constitutional amendment changing the state superintendent from an elected position to one appointed by the governor. Other bills of interest are the school board removal bills. The Senate and the House have passed different versions of the school board removal bill. This past Thursday, after nearly 5 hours of debate, the House voted 73-21 to pass its version of the state's education accountability system, its revision of the state's education accountability system. The Senate version of there is a Senate version of the bill, and the House bill retains the provision to dissolve boards, but redefines what constitutes an underperforming school or district, or chronically underperforming school, and adds that the state superintendent may take over the management of a school or district if they fail to submit a turnaround plan. Other bills of interest include the teacher vaccine bill. It's been passed by the Senate but not yet passed by the House. The House Ways and Means Healthcare Subcommittee took no action this past Tuesday on the bill that would add teachers and school support staff into the first group, Phase 1A, eligible for the COVID-19 vaccine. After listening to the testimony of more than 50 people over a 3-hour period, the subcommittee took no action, saying members of the committee need to hear from DHEC to get a better idea of the state's vaccine supply, the impact of a possible third vaccine that'll be coming out by Johnson & Johnson if it's approved, and also from the South Carolina Department of Education to hear about implementation plans for administering the vaccine. The committee will meet again tomorrow. The House version also authorizes the use of school facilities to vaccinate teachers and staff, and also strikes the provision prohibiting district office staff from having access to the vaccine. And one final, no action from the Senate on teacher step pay increase. The meeting of the Senate Finance Committee to consider the teacher step pay increase was canceled this past Tuesday. The meeting has been rescheduled for tomorrow. That concludes my report. Any questions?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Yes, Ms. Rayford.
No, go ahead.
I just wanted to say, for the record, I want this body to be aware that with the Senate bill that Dr. Hilton reported on, as far as the school board removal bill, I think it's disturbing that both of our senators voted in favor of this bill that essentially takes the power of our electorate away from them. Because if the State Department was to take over a school district based on one of the categories that they're able to take over the district, it removes the superintendent, it also removes the board. And the state superintendent, along with the legislative delegation, will be able to appoint 5 members of a board for a minimum of 3 years with no maximum attached to it. And I can tell you, I'm a board member that has not been contacted by a member of our legislative delegation when it comes to my thoughts or opinions on this bill. And I'm pretty sure it's the same around this dais. But that's very disturbing to me because you're taking away the choice of our voters. The same voters that vote for our members of our delegation are the same voters that vote for each one of us. And you take that away for at least 3 years. It could be much longer. That if we were to be taken over by the State Department of Education, that the citizens of Sumter County would not have a say who sits around this dais. And to know that now this bill it has passed second reading in the House, and only 2 members of our House delegation voted against it is very disturbing as well. And I'm pretty sure this bill will be debated this week when they go back into session tomorrow for a 3rd reading. And the only choice that we have between now and when the bill is signed by the governor is to put pressure on our legislative delegation about their vote to pass such a bill. Because it's not about any of us that sit around this dais, but it's about the electorate of Sumter County, that their voice could be taken away from them because of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnston. Yes, Mrs. Ray?
And that was what I wanted to comment on. Yeah, we have not been contacted by legislators, but we probably should be contacting them because this is very serious when you think about taking away the voice of our constituents and the idea of bringing in people and appointing people to take over the school district for an undetermined amount of time is very concerning and should be to all of us. And just wanted to mention that also, that's one of the things that we really need to be proactive on and have our voices heard.
Thank you, Mrs. Ray. Dr. Hilton, that they give, a lot of times in those articles, they will give you contact information. Did they give any contact information for whom we should reach out to?
Well, it has, in the email we all received, it has the bill number. You know, say House bill, House and a number, or S Senate bill and a number. The contact information for our representatives is not included in the email that we received from the School Boards Association. Is that what you're asking?
Yes, pretty much.
No, ma'am, there's no information in the email with our representatives' contact information in it.
Yeah, well, I know I haven't been contacted, I don't know whether some of the others have, but, you know, that's a big thing, really, and it's something for all of us to be concerned about. For someone else to come into your house and take over, and you have no say-so over who or what, and don't know how long. So I also encourage you to reach out and find those people, and I'm sure before we leave here, Brian will have that information.
Well, and Debbie Elmore had sent out some information earlier on that. They had a way that you could word what you wanted to say to the legislators, so, if you look back in your email, you should be able to find that.
Yeah, so let's become involved in that and get our word out there so that we can be counted in whatever they decide to do. It won't be, they can't say that they did not hear from Sumter School District.
Yes, Dr. Hilton mentioned that an email went out early today.
Yes, sir.
I mean, to who?
I think to all the members of the board. I think everybody gets it every week. Don't you get all these emails from SCSBA?
I did
Yes,
not,
yes.
More like an update.
I did not receive an email.
I get several every week. They may not have your correct email.
Well, they sent one on the 19th. I did see that, Reverend McDaniel, because I didn't receive one.
You didn't, huh?
From me. Unless I'm over
I
there.
got one today about 2 o'clock.
No, I didn't see one from, what, have you discussing this? I didn't
School
see-
Boards Association,
I didn't see- I
SCSBA.
didn't receive anything on that today.
Okay. Well, Sean said that he will forward you the copy of what he received, and then.
No, ma'am, I said that I agreed, I didn't receive it.
Oh, you didn't receive it, I'm
So
sorry.
whoever got it, just forward it, because I get them. I saw something on the 19th.
Johnny, could you forward that to, Reagan and Darrell, if you don't mind?
Sure.
Thank you so much.
I'll see if Amy can help me with that.
Okay, and thank you all as well for letting us know that you have not received that.
You might want to check with the School Board Association, make sure. they
Amy,
have
I
it
just sent
correct.
it to you. The one that was sent it to us, yeah.
Okay, we'll make sure you get that, and we'll move on from there. But thank everyone for your committee reports and your input. Thank you, Johnny, for your legislative update.
Yes, ma'am.
We're now down to 4 the superintendent's report. Dr. Martin Knox, please provide the information listed under your superintendent's report, and you may proceed to the next topic until completion of your entire report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, Madam Chairman, Vice Chairman Baker, members of the Sumter School District Board, and members of the community. I'd like to begin by just giving a shout out or accolades to several of our students throughout the district, as the Columbia Urban League has honored 23 of our students, 23 from Crestwood, 17 from Lakewood, and 27 from Sumter High, for their hard work, dedication, and excellence in one or more of the following areas: academics, the arts, leadership, technology, and athletics. They will also highlight students who have received special recognition in the areas of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics at its virtual annual Black History Month Young and Gifted Awards ceremony. That was a mouthful. This year's theme is Achievement Matters. Achievement is the sustaining legacy of Black History Month. So if you have not done so, please, when we come to the conclusion of today's presentation, if we can just do it now, just give an applause for our students who have been recognized by the Columbia Urban League. The other thing, this month, please join us as we celebrate CTE Month, which is a time to support career and technology and technical education and CTE programs across the United States. The mission of the Sumter School District's career and technical education is to provide standards-based curricula through the integration of academic and career and technical instruction for students in grades 7 through 12, while focusing on the district's 2020 vision for career and technology education. to prepare all students to be college, career, and/or military ready. Our 16 career clusters connect what students learn in school with the knowledge and skills they need for success in college and careers. Each career cluster identifies different pathways from secondary school to 2 to 4 year colleges and graduate school and the workplace. And so I'd just like to say, while we are celebrating CTE Month, I want to make sure that our community understands the importance of CTE. While we offer these pathways for our students, it is our responsibility to take advantage of this, because not only does it prepare us to be globally competitive and competitive with their peers across the nation, it gives them another opportunity to demonstrate their capabilities. The definition of CTE over the years has truly changed, and it is not a place just sitting there as a placeholder, but it is an opportunity to allow our children to flourish and to give them additional skills that will make them marketable as they are preparing to graduate from our school. So I'd like to just say to our CTE teachers, thank you for the work that you do, and for those students who are in those programs and pathways, continue to work hard and to accelerate. And for all positive information or information as it relates to the district, I want to continue to encourage our community to follow us through social media. We celebrate and publicize information on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and on the district's splash page once you go to sumterschools.net. So let's please make sure we follow one of those social media platforms and continue to support the work that we're doing, and or to get information as it pertains to our schools. And in closing, not only did our board go to a retreat this weekend, or to go to a conference this weekend, learning never stops. I too participated in the AASA, which is the School Administrators Association for Superintendents. And much like what Ms. Ray said, our topics were around supporting the total child. Usually we say the whole child, but their topic this year was the total child. And it was great to be amongst other superintendents and principals, not in a physical capacity, but in a virtual capacity, because it was the first time that AASA did a virtual conference. But many of the sessions were around the social emotional aspect of educating our children. And one of my takeaways from that was, I never looked at it this way, but a social emotional learning is not a separate course. It is not a separate opportunity to teach children, but instead it's a way to integrate it into the instructional delivery. And I say it quite frequently, if children aren't mentally prepared for learning, it doesn't matter how well you've prepared the lesson, how good you are executing the lesson. If children aren't mentally prepared, they're not going to receive the content. So we will continue our focus on SEL. I have some takeaways from the convention or the conference that I attended virtually last Thursday and Friday, and I had the pleasure of sitting on a panel talking about what we can do to continue to move education forward. It's a challenging space for all leaders, but it is very challenging for superintendents across the nation navigating through these challenging times. So this concludes my portion of the tour of Sumter, and at this time I would ask Ms. Miller to go to 4.2 for the general fund statement. So Ms. Miller, the floor is yours at this time.
All right, good evening, Chairwoman Dr. Jackson, Vice Chair Dr. Baker, Superintendent Dr. Martin Knox, and board members. This evening, you have in front of you the January 31st, 2021 General Fund Revenue and Expenditure Report. The fiscal year 21 projected revenue is $124,578,320. The change from last month relates to revenue code 1950, which is the refund of prior year expenditures. We've received approximately $90,000 refund from the South Carolina Insurance and Trust Board for workers' compensation. And again, a reminder that we have built in a decrease in revenue for projected student count and the statewide revenue reduction of 5%. Moving on to the expenditures. On page 2, total expenditures are projected to be $126,793,442, which will result in a reduction in the general fund of approximately $32,000, basically a break even for fiscal year 2021. We will continue to monitor revenue and expenses and adjust as needed throughout the remainder of the year. Are there any questions?
Dr. Baker?
Yes, Ms. Miller, I have a couple of questions. On the revenue side, down at the end of the revenue report, projected reduction in state revenue of 5%, and that's still what we're going with. Projected reduction in state revenue, student count FY21. Is that the 440 students that we keep hearing about?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and now that's projected, so we don't know what that's actually gonna be. But your next one is known reduction state revenue for FY20. That is a reduction in the total number of students we had enrolled for the 19-20 year.
Yes, sir.
Okay, now, if you look at your 90-day report, and I'm sure you've reviewed these, your 90-day report this time last year versus this time this year when the 90-day report was turned in, we're down by 775 students.
Between the 90-day this year.
The two 90 days, the 90-day last year and the 90-day this year. We're down by 775 students. So I guess what I'm trying to figure is, where is the gap if we're talking about 440 kids, but if you compare last year's 90-day report to this year's 90-day report, we're down by 775 kids.
I've used the 45-day count because it's the 135-day count that's the actual final one that will be used.
Right.
So I projection with a conservative amount of 2 million. I looked at it today, it was approximately 1.6 million, so there's a $400 cushion in there in case there's an additional decrease based on the 45-day and the 135th day, because it, again, is still just a projection.
Yeah. Okay,
Does
well.
that answer your question?
Well, not really. I was trying to see if we could account for that variance there from the 90-day to the 90-day, and I understand that 135 days drop dead report, so to speak. But I just didn't want us to come up short on our estimates or our projections is where I was going with that.
And so,
And that's why I've built in a little bit of a cushion, but we can look at that further, increase that more if we need to. But I will look at the 90-day to the 135th as well to see if it recovered some last year, more
Good.
in line with the 45-day.
Good, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you, Dr. Baker. Okay. We go to.
Were there additional questions before we? Okay.
you can go ahead, Ms. Miller, to 4.3.
And this is for the, follow-up on the finance committee recommendations. And did Ms. Ray want to say something on this? For the follow-up?
Well, I think what we were hoping, we had quite a bit of information that you gave us at our finance committee meeting that we want to share with the entire board. Just reviewing the projected expenditures that would possibly cause our fund balance to be lower than it looks like it is at this point, and just so they will have that information. And then we wanted to also hear about an alternative plan to bonuses. We've talked about salary increase, when that would happen, and where that would come from. So if you could just kind of share some of the things that you shared with the finance committee.
Did you hear?
Yes, we had talked about where we thought the fund balance was going to end up based on our reports. And there were some, figures that we did not include in these figures, which would be an additional transfer to the food service fund. Right now, we're projecting about a $2 million transfer that may need to be made to make up for the decrease in participation in food service. Those figures are not included in the general fund report in front of you this evening. I'm trying to recall exactly what we looked at that day. Dr. Martinox, can you help me out with that? Was that one of our PowerPoint presentations?
It was, yes,
Was
and
it
so,
ever-
yes, and we did not include, the components that you just spoke about, as we continue to move forward. Now, when we had this discussion, there was another, set of numbers that we had compiled that showed exactly where the, I see you looking for it, you know what I'm talking about? So if you can provide those numbers from that, discussion as well, that would be helpful.
Madam Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Dr. Hilton.
I think what the finance committee had anticipated here is to have some discussion based on those numbers. Isn't that what we were thinking, Cheryl?
Well, yeah, and what
Yeah.
I wanted her to include, and I'm looking at, we talked about the 5% reduction, the step increase, you did mention food service, transportation, those were the numbers we looked at, but go ahead.
Well, what I'm saying is I don't think we can have a very good discussion unless we have those numbers in front of us.
Okay.
So that all the board members can look at those numbers just like the finance committee did. And we don't seem to be in that position at this moment.
We have the numbers, did you find them?
Yes, ma'am.
So Amy,
Yeah,
Everybody is it in that PowerPoint?
about
Everyone
the,
has access to that.
when we were doing our analysis, we
do.
sorry, what was that?
no, go ahead.
Okay, it was the 5% reduction, which was $3.7 million. The food service transfer, which was the $2 million. We actually had 1.8 million at that time. The bus driver revenue impact, we think there could be a $250,000 impact, based on a reduced revenue for the number of days the drivers are driving. The teacher step increase of $2.2 million. And then we built in, a bonus at $500 a piece of, that would be 1.8 million, which means we need to come up with $9.7 million to cover that. The additional pieces that needed to be added to that was the decrease in enrollment projection of the $2 million and the cost to unfreeze frozen vacancies of $1.2 million, which brings that to a total of $12,950,000 that would be needed.
And so we deducted that from the fund balance, and where did that land us?
That took us down to $10.3 million, and the required fund balance is $10.5 million.
So we can continue to Dr. Hilton's point, without them having the numbers to be able to process them. We can't go into the conversation, but I can have them provided to you by email if you'd like.
That would be fine, but I'm curious about if the report we just looked at says the fund balance is gonna be 25 million. But you've just told us that fund balance is gonna be reduced by a transfer to food service, by missing students, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Why aren't all those numbers on this report that we're looking at so that we get a clearer picture of the actual fund balance? It's all this came up, and I'm trying to be sweet. I'm trying to have a sweet voice here. I'm trying to be nice and sweet here. That all this came up when we started talking about the bonus. You know, that all these things that we were going to spend money on came up when we started talking about the bonus. So my question is, why aren't all these things included in the report that shows what fund balance is gonna be. And I'm not saying anybody's doing anything wrong, I'm just curious why, if the report says the fund balance is gonna be 25 million, then when we say, let's give a bonus, well, we may not be able to give a bonus because the fund balance is gonna be reduced by this number, this number, this number, and this number. Well, why aren't all those numbers included in this report?
And so.
Does that question make any sense to
It
anybody?
does, it does. And so when we talk about the unknowns, that what Jennifer's talking about, Ms. Miller's talking about, is the projection. And so putting them on the report, they're not actualities, these are what we're planning for. These are the decreases in the fund balance and in the monies that we have, that if there is, again, the step increase for teachers, the revenue transfer for food services, the amount of monies that will be allocated to us based on the number of students who we currently have the per pupil allocation, these are projections. And because we don't know these answers definitively, that's why they're not on the definitive aspect of the report. And so Jennifer, do you want to add anything to what I just said, or did you hear me?
I'll add that the 3.7 million of the 5% reduction is included in the figures that are presented, and also the $2 million enrollment projection is included in that. So 5.7 million of that 12.9 is included. The ones that were not included are the food service transfer, because we're hoping that we're coming up with solutions to offset that by promoting and trying to increase participation. The bus driver revenue impact, we are unsure of that because we do not know what the State Department is going to decide on how that's going to be calculated or how they would even do that. The teacher step increase, we don't know how much the state is going to provide to offset that, so we certainly hope we will see a good portion of that covered. The bonus calculation, again, that's just for discussion purposes, so that is not in our projected number at this time. And then the cost to unfreeze the positions is not included because we are halfway through the year, we have not unfroze those. And so again, that's just reminding everybody that we are understaffed currently, and if we still need to try to get back to the staffing requirement that we need to remember that we've got $1.2 million of frozen positions.
Okay, Dr. Baker?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Jennifer, when you were talking about the vacancies, if we go back to that 90-day report and we're down by 775 kids, and if you just do quick math, and I know this wouldn't equal out equally across elementary, middle, and high schools, and if we just said that's 25 kids per teacher, that's 31 teaching positions that we would need if we don't have that 775 kids. So has any of that been factored in?
No, sir. Our hope would be that enrollment would increase, that this is a temporary reduction, and we wouldn't want to make staffing decisions based on a temporary issue. And so, no, they have not been included.
Okay. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Okay, still moving on around. Yes, Brian?
I heard what Dr. Baker just said about the staffing need if we have a reduction in students. But at the same time, one of the biggest concerns that we hear from our teaching staff is classroom sizes. And 25 is still a large classroom size, especially in the middle of a pandemic when we're talking about spacing in classrooms. So that's something that I just wanted to throw out there. When I hear that we may need to reduce staff if we don't have the number of students, in an ideal world that may be the case, but in the middle of a pandemic, reduction of staff is not going to help us when it comes to class sizes. And it's not going to alleviate one of the biggest concerns that we hear from teachers about where they have too many students in their classroom. That was just something I wanted to throw out there.
Too many, plus they're teaching virtually and in person. Yeah, okay. Is anyone else? Johnny?
So going back to the numbers, the reduction to fund balance, if we gave a $500 bonus to everybody, would be how much, Jennifer?
Just for the bonus part you're saying, or in total all the figures that I
No,
discussed?
just the bonus part.
The bonus part, would be 1.8 million is what I used in that calculation. Let me pull up. We talked about, and that was for a $500 bonus, and we used 1.8 million in that projection, and that was so we could cover the FICA tax for the employee as well.
Okay. Well, so, may I ask another question? So, and I'm not trying to be out of order here, but if the board wanted to take a vote on doing a bonus, is that possible? How is that accomplished?
It's not on the agenda.
I mean, I'm not talking about tonight. I know it's not on tonight's agenda.
It's not on the agenda.
I'm talking about in the future. You know, at our next meeting or our next meeting, if we wanted to take a vote on providing a bonus, is that possible?
Well, a vote perhaps would be possible, but you got to get the support of, you have to have the support of the majority of the board. And that would have to, like you say, wouldn't be able to happen
No,
tonight.
I know, not tonight, I'm
And would have
saying,
to appear on the agenda
yes.
and go from there. Am I correct in that?
Yes, ma'am, it'll be a regular meeting?
Yeah, we'll
Or
have to
when
be
action is taken
at
at
a
a
regular,
regular meeting?
yeah, one of the regular meetings.
So it is possible to put it on the agenda at a regular meeting to take a vote on a $500 bonus or something similar.
I'm
just
assuming
curious.
that it is.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Thank you.
Do we have some more discussion?
No, I just want to say anything is possible. I just wanted to respond to his question. He wanted to know how was that possible? And I was just going to enlighten you based on my experience. It would be possible when the superintendent gets with the CFO and then they bring a recommendation to the board at whenever the designated time is. And then the board will be eligible at that time to go ahead and take a vote on it or whatever. But basically when the superintendent brings it to us.
I mean, if I requested that it be put on the agenda, it has to be approved by the superintendent?
No, sir, you can, I just said, you can request whatever to be put on to the chair, what needs to be on the agenda.
Right, that's what-
However, yeah, every board member has that right to request with the chairman what needs to be put on the agenda, and the chairman gets with the superintendent, and if something that needs to be placed on the agenda at that time, that be placed on there, then it may, if not, then it will be placed at a later time, such as bonuses, whenever the superintendent and CFO deems it necessary to bring a recommendation before this board to discuss bonuses after they've done their homework, then they can be able to present what they're, want to present to us as a recommendation.
I'm a little confused by it.
I'm using it. Okay, I see your hand, Brian, just for a moment. What the ruling is that can happen, but it has to be at a regular meeting,
I understand.
okay?
Yeah.
So that was your question.
Right.
And that is the answer to your question right now. But quite naturally, we usually, before we put anything on the agenda, there is dialoguing about it. But it can go on the agenda, but it has to be at a regular.
I understand. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next question, thank you, Darrell, too. Next question, Brian?
It's not really a question, but it's more so a statement. If we just heard from Ms. Miller of the reductions and the anticipated cuts that we're gonna, or transfers that we're gonna have to make, if that is gonna put our fund balance without a bonus below the state requirement for our general fund balance, for the life of me, I cannot understand why we would entertain the conversation now of a bonus without waiting for these budget unknowns to become something that is known and definitive. And I'm saying that because you all may remember we took a vote at Furman Middle School one night to reopen a school and was placed on fiscal emergency. Even though we could show the State Department that it would not impact the recovery plan, the financial aspect of the recovery plan. It would just change the look of the recovery plan. We were placed on fiscal emergency for that. And something that I brought up earlier tonight was the House and the Senate bills for education reform centered around removal of a superintendent and a board. And it's not even, I don't even want to get you all hung up on the removal of the board or the superintendent. The removal of the electorate's voice is what at the center of this bill. But one of the conditions to remove the superintendent and the board is being placed on fiscal emergency.
Correct.
We just were removed from fiscal emergency come January. The letter from Molly Spearman stated, if we have any discrepancies in fiscal year 20 or 21, we will bypass caution and warning and be placed back on fiscal emergency. So I will say for myself, I do not want to do anything as a member of this board and will advise members of this board not to do anything that is going to take away the electorate's voice. Forget our voice or our seat at this table. Don't do anything that is going to damage the trust that we have worked so hard the last 2 years to establish with our constituency. When we sit at this table now because of this same constituency, but we could make a decision around this dais that could remove their voice.
Concur.
Thank you, Brian. Any other comments or questions? But the question was, could it be done? And that was the answer.
Thank you.
I don't think that, well, I just think that all of us need to be very cautious about what we do if we don't want to go back to what we were. And I appreciate the statement, and I appreciate, Johnny, your question. It's just a matter of knowing, and that's what he was asking for, and that's what we provided. Yes, Mrs. Rayner?
And the other part of this, though, was you have discussed with us that you would prefer a salary increase would have more impact than a small bonus. So when we do find out where we stand, how would you do that? Or what have you got in the works? Could you explain that to us?
Sure. First thing is we would look at our numbers to make sure that we can give everyone in the district a salary increase, not just a group of people in one area of education. It would be for the entire district. We would have to look at teacher tenure, we would have to look at the steps that they would be on, and then I would have the dialogue with you through the board and through the finance committee to say this is where we are and we're ready. And I would definitely have the conversation with our stakeholders, stakeholders meaning employees in the district. And then we would move forward with that. But I thank you for bringing that up because, again, that's what we've been aiming for all along, even pre-COVID. That's one of my areas of focus is to make sure that we can compete with our neighboring school districts. Once we figure out where we're going, I heard Dr. Hilton earlier in his report that the step increase component was put on hold until tomorrow. Was that what I heard you say earlier?
I'd have to look back at my notes.
Yes.
But it was put on hold for a day or two, yeah.
Yes, sir. So once we, again, there are just so many unknowns around the work that we're doing, whether it's with student enrollment, whether it's with the funding piece. There are just too many unknowns for me to say, yes, Ms. Ray, next month we're going to go in this direction, because I don't know. And I don't want to take a misstep again. The last thing I want to do is to take our school district and our community back to fiscal emergency. And the repercussions to it are very severe. And so, again, I'll say it again and again and again. I am not saying that our staff does not deserve a raise, because they do. I'll say it again. Our staff deserves a raise, and I've been saying that since day one. Pre-COVID, post-COVID, during COVID, they do deserve a raise. And that's what my goal has been ever since. Anybody can raise your hand and tell me the ever since and Jennifer smiling. But right now, with so many unknowns, it's difficult for me to give a definitive answer to any degree to say. But I will tell you wholeheartedly, it is my anticipation to support our bus drivers, food service, paraeducators, teachers, facilities, custodians. I can keep going on and on and on. That has been the end goal. And I know that there is this perception that exists that other districts are doing it, why can't we? because we have to manage our finances moving forward. We have been doing that. I'm not being selfish, I'm not being, whatever you wanna call somebody who is, holding on to monies for just the sake of holding on monies. I'm not. But, you know, I don't know how else to say it.
I think you had your hand up, Dr. Hilton.
I think, if I may follow up on Cheryl's question, I think you've said a couple of times that rather than give a bonus, you would rather give a raise at a later time. Is that?
Yes, sir?
All right, so then, I think that begs the question, and I think what she was asking is, what, and I'm not trying to put words in her mouth, but what's the plan to be able to give a raise? If we can't give a bonus, then what's our plan to be able to give a raise? Do we, you know, what is, what,
She just answered that.
pardon me?
Wasn't that already addressed? Didn't she just answer that?
I'll say it again. I'll say it again.
Well, no, trying to keep a nice soft voice. No, but you, I didn't hear a plan as to how we're gonna give a raise. I heard you say everybody deserves a raise. I agree with that. I think everybody deserves a raise. I think everybody deserves a small bonus now. But the question is not whether they deserve a raise, the question is a financial question. Where is the money coming from to give the raise? That would be the bottom line.
So as we're continuing to increase and maximize the monies that are in our fund balance or in our reserve, and we are stable enough, after we recognize where we're going to face reductions, that's where we would look to have the salary increases. Right now, with the unknowns, I can't predict what our budget is going to look like in terms of our reserve beyond this. And so that's what I'm talking about. I can't sit here and say it's going to happen by a specific date because I don't know when those dates are going to occur. As I said previously, the only date that I can probably say is finite is the fact that we know that June 15th, if the step increases occur, June 15th is the only date I know that I can sit here and say, this is the only date that has been provided. Teachers, if we go forward with the step increase, have to be compensated by June 15th, 2021. That's the only definitive answer I have. So I, you know, in terms of, again, making sure we are financially responsible and stable. Once we've done that, then that's where our plan will begin to increase people's salary, our staff's salary.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Johnny. Thank you, Dr. Hill.
I just have a comment of Dr. Jackson.
Yes.
And I know we've been talking about this issue almost, I think this is the fourth time we brought this before this board. And I think everybody around the board agreed that our staff for this district deserves a bonus. And in fact, take it a step further, they deserve a pay increase. I think that is universal around this table. But I do want to say that I don't think that we're all realizing a couple of years ago, as we compare to other districts, they were not in the same situation as the Sumter School District. So I think playing it very safely will again save us from coming off of whatever list the superintendent of the state may have to place us on because we're not being fiscally responsible. And I think everybody knows exactly what I'm saying. But this is the fourth time we talked about this, and the same thing just keeps coming up. And I think that we need to wait on the recommendation. And I believe it was just shared that June 15th, 2021 will be the date that we can have more information to further discuss what we're discussing now. So that's just my personal opinion. We love the staff. I think all of us support them. We know what hard work is being done in this district. Some of us see it firsthand. So that's not a question. The question is, we need to make sure that we receive the proper recommendation so that we may not be placed on fiscal emergency, and that's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reagan.
And I just wanna say one more thing.
One more
The
question.
finance
That's all.
committee is not intending to try to get us into a problem. I wanted y'all to have all the information that was discussed at the committee meeting, because we discussed all these numbers. So they need to be in front of you as we're looking at this, because that is something that we all want, either the salary increase or a bonus. So it's not to say that we're trying to force us to do something that would put us into a problem, but for you to have all the information that we need. And that's what the intent of the committee was. So, because a lot of times we hear things that aren't given to the total board. So I wanted to make sure that we all understood where we were, and then you can make your decision based on that. It's not to keep bringing it up, but to make sure we all have the information that we need.
Okay.
And y'all know there were a lot of other complications with that physical emergency back when that happened. And I certainly don't want us to get into that again, but,
Right.
you know, it was more than just the money. Okay?
Thank you, Mrs. Ray. So let me just say this. It appears that Jennifer was not aware that you wanted all of that presented.
Well, she
or
presented that,
Available. You said you
um,
wanted everyone to have it in front of them.
well, you know, Dr. Hilton may wanted it that, but, you know, this is how we did it at the committee meeting. I had it written down, you know,
Okay.
where we had done that
So-
before, so that's,
So that's
Yeah.
satisfactory, what was
well, it
said.
isn't to me, but if he feels like, if you want
You
it.
are, Madam Chair.
Right,
Is it
that if a
satisfactory?
board member wants to have the numbers in front of them, and it may not be a bad idea for everybody to have that information in front of them, because maybe everybody doesn't, I had written all of that down as we discussed it.
Well, I'm just trying to get a consensus as to what you want as chairwoman, so that if there's something else we need to do, we can ask, Ms. Miller to give that to us, and we can move forward.
That's up to whatever the board wants.
Well, maybe we could get it in the superintendent's report on Friday.
Johnny, you're out of order.
Yeah, if y'all want the information, but I just heard that people are tired of the discussion, so if they don't want the information, that's fine too. Because I've got it written down, so it's
I don't-
whatever they want.
Okay, I'm sorry, but I don't think it's a thing of being tired of the discussion, because all of us care about this issue and the topic. But I don't want anyone either to feel as if we think that you're pushing an issue that you shouldn't be pushing, because our staff and teachers and all are very dear to us, and all of us have a caring attitude, but all of us know that we just don't have the funds right now. And I think that our executive staff and our superintendent, if they could, they would give it to us today. But not knowing and the uncertainties that exist, it's just not prudent to say I can do this and that at this given time. So your point is taken, Johnny's point is taken, and if by chance you want the report, let me know and we can get that produced for you and give it to you. Now, I saw your hand. I'm gonna take 2 more questions and we're gonna move on to the next committee report. Madam.
I was just gonna say, to Dr. Hilton's point, when he brought up, if we can't give the bonus, then how are we gonna be able to give a salary increase? And I think that is where we are. We don't know, because of the budget unknowns, we don't know where we are. We don't know if we're gonna be able to give the bonus. We don't know if we're gonna be able to give a salary increase. That's why I think it's the consensus of the board is to wait and see where we are so that we can make those decisions. But I would say, as a point of order, can we just get that report included in the superintendent brief for this week, and we can move on with the discussion at the pleasure of the board, please?
Okay, and Johnny was basically saying the same thing as well. So we'll ask the superintendent to include that in her report on Friday, and all of us will have that information available and at our hand. Okay? Thank you so much for the discussion. Madam Superintendent?
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Miller, 4.4 capital projects update.
Yes, you should have in front of you all 500 funds that we currently have. It's ranging from Fund 519 to 525. I'm not gonna go into the details of all of those. You also have the capital projects by location for each of those funds, and if there are any questions, I'll take those now.
Any questions for Mrs. Miller? Any questions for Mrs. Miller? Any questions for Mrs. Miller? Hearing none, I guess you can go into the next one. Thank you, Mrs. Miller.
And 4.5 is the Finance Committee recommendation, the capital projects. One of the discussions that we engaged in during our last meeting was to bring back to the board recommendations that for the use of monies that were set aside for the project as it relates to R.E. Davis. And what you have in front of you is a hard copy of two options, option A and option B. Option A provides us with the following. The first thing is safety security doors for our elementary schools. And this would include Lamira, Croswell Drive, Willow Drive, Wilder, Cherryvale, Alice Drive Elementary, Millwood, Kingsbury, and Manchester. And that would be approximately $90,000. The second component of that would be security doors for middle and high schools, which would be the high schools and middle schools that we have within our district, and it would also include the Adult Education Center. And that project would cost around $110,000. The next one would be sewage lift stations, for R.E. Davis. The next would be the work that is necessary at Rafting Creek, which is around the grading, which would cost around $85,000. And the fifth component would be general surveillance cameras or wiring for our schools. Option B would just be to focus on the general surveillance of security cameras throughout the district. And so those are the two options that have been brought forward to the board for us to utilize those funds before we get to that deadline. Jennifer, Ms. Miller, I'm sorry, can you do me a favor and revisit the penalty that would come across if we don't spend these funds by the deadline?
Yes, the penalty is that you have to pay arbitrage rebate, and it's typically, they are charging you a fee instead of taxes because we were allowed to invest those funds. My projection would be that the fee would not exceed the interest we have earned off of those funds, but we would have to pay a portion of that interest back to the government because they did not get taxed.
Dr. Hilton?
A point of order here, if I may. Would it not be permissible to discuss this in executive session since it deals with security?
Well, I guess they were doing it because it was on the agenda.
Yes, ma'am, but we just received this information.
Well, I don't see any problem with that. So you mean?
Yes, ma'am. Just a point of clarification, Madam Superintendent, these are the monies that have been designated to R.E. Davis Preparatory Academy. My question would be, before we move any monies away from R.E. Davis, can you give me sort of an update on the need for R.E. Davis? Because what I don't want to do is move the monies away from R.E. Davis, and then there's a lot of complaints about R.E. Davis didn't get this fixed, they didn't get that fixed, they didn't get this, and then we can't get the monies back. So just kind of want to know where does R.E. Davis stand in regards of the need for our college prep, school.
So this is specifically designated, this was a line item that was designated for the field itself, for the field, and that's it.
Just the field?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
This 400,000? What else? Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
I was just going, Chair, to piggyback on what Reverend McGinnis said, you actually have got $415,000 in this figure delegated to R.E. Davis. You have got the land at $98,382. You've got the architectural services for $6,500 or $50. You've got the concrete work at $10,000. You got the field house and concession for $200,000, and then you got the athletic field for $100,000. So you're looking at $415,000. And in my opinion, I humbly submit, going back to what Reverend McGaney is pointing out, we need to have a discussion to decide if we're going to do what we said we were going to do for R.E. Davis before we look at repurposing these funds. Are we going to have an athletic field for them? Are we going to have a concession stand and a field house? Are we going to do the concrete work? Are we going to purchase additional land to have these facilities? Or are we going to continue to utilize Maywood for the athletic services and opportunities? So I think this is putting the cart before the horse to look at option A and B before we as a board decide, are we going to honor what we said we were going to do to fully equip R.E. Davis, particularly for the middle school needs? That's just my opinion.
That was my question for asking the superintendent about the need for clarification. Make sure they already got everything they need.
And so, again, similar to what Dr. Baker just stated, the land, the concession stand, all those factors centered around the playing field, the football field.
Yes, ma'am.
And so, Jennifer, what else was in that $400,000+?
I'm sorry if I understood the question was what else is in that $400,000+?
Yes. Yes.
It is the land for $98,000, the R.E. Davis concrete work for $10,000, the field house for $200,000, and the athletic field for $100,000. The architect fees have been incurred.
So it's designated for since this is centered around the field, I guess the decision has already been made that there's not going to be a field and all that stuff. That's what.
So we've had those conversations. We even engaged in dialogue with the principal, and we looked at the number of kids who were participating. We looked at the number of kids who were participating in the athletics through 6th through 8th grade. And I think when we finalized the numbers, we had less than 20 kids. Now, they have been using Maywood, so we have not touched these monies because I know, as Dr. Baker just pointed out, that these monies were designated for a specific purpose. And so the monies have been sitting here, and the purpose for us putting this together is one, because the board asked for us to put the options together. But as Mr. Alston presented, I believe, at one of the meetings, what are we gonna do with these monies before we wind up having the penalties incurred? But if there are needs for R.E. Davis, it's just about this pot of money and making sure we don't have a penalty because we've not used it within the time frame that has been identified.
And that's a great point. We don't want to be penalized, you know, but I understand all of that. So I just wanted to just raise that just to make sure we do need to spend the monies because we don't want to be penalized, but still yet just want a point of clarification on the other needs to make to R.E. Davis. So my question is, even if we decide to proceed at some point, do the kids continue to utilize Maywood?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And so to Dr. Hilton's point, because there are some safety components in here, I just was complying with what the directive was, and that was to bring two options. And so we continue to ponder back and forth. We identified the most pertinent needs by prioritizing schools and making sure we included all of our schools because we don't want to minimize the needs of our schools. And so that's why you have this, but again, going into detail, I believe this should have been an executive session discussion, but
Yes, Dr. Hilton, oh, okay, let's go here.
Thank you. So I have two questions, if I may. One question is, well, I have a question and a statement. One question is, Jennifer, approximately how much is the penalty gonna be if we don't spend this money? What's the cutoff date?
Cutoff date is in May of this spring. I don't have the exact figure of how much it will cost. There's a whole calculation that's done by an outside arbitrage firm. They charge us to do that calculation, so I don't have that, but I do not think it will not exceed the interest we have already earned on those funds.
But I understand that we're just gonna lose some interest. We'll make less interest, but you don't have a number on how much less.
Yep.
$10,000, $500, $500, or $5,000, or you don't even can't even take a guess?
I don't have the projection in front of me, so
Okay.
I don't wanna take a guess to be held to it.
Okay, that's okay. So then the second thing is I think Dr. Baker and Reverend Gainey have raised a good point here, is that perhaps we need to have some further discussion about what do the folks at R.E. Davis think about all this stuff that was on the list initially, and you said you've spoken with the principal, but maybe we need to have some discussion in here about that, you know. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, thank you, Doctor. Mrs. Ray, I saw your hand up.
Okay, my question is, I understand that really we wouldn't lose, we have enough interest to cover the penalty. Can the money just sit there? This is from Ms. Miller. Can it just remain there? Would you have another penalty next year, or once you pay the penalty, then you can just set aside the money and leave it?
The funds will remain there, and you just have to pay the penalty, and we pay the penalty out of the general fund.
But that would be one time, or?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so once you pay the penalty, which we have the interest already earned, then the money can just sit there, okay? I just wanted us to clarify that, because I think there was a question on the finance committee that we could possibly lose the money.
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Ray. Mr. Alston?
If we have pressing needs across the district, and I understand making good on a promise to the R.E. Davis community, but if we have pressing needs across the district, why not utilize the funding that we have available without the penalty? Because we already take out a bond in the spring and the fall, so if the numbers at R.E. Davis increase for us to have a need to build a new field and field house and all of those things, then why not take out a bond in the future for those things? Why sit on money that we have needs across the district for students that serving in buildings that serving students, when we can utilize the field at Maywood? We have been utilizing the field at Maywood. Why not just take out a bond in the future if those numbers at R.E. Davis increase for athletics?
Yes, Dr. Baker?
Yeah, I understand exactly what you're saying, Brian, but in my opinion, we need to come back to what Dr. Hilton, Reverend McGaney, and I are saying. This board needs to have some serious dialogue about, is this the board's decision to say, okay, we're gonna continue to use the facilities at Maywood. Now, if we do, we gotta make some improvements to those facilities at Maywood. So we need to decide, okay, is this the direction we're gonna go? We're gonna abandon the R.E. Davis projects that's related to athletics. And this is basically all athletics. Is it the thing to do, and the board's made that decision, and we're gonna need a little bit of money to put in to upgrade some of the facilities over there at Maywood if we're gonna use it. But all I'm saying is the board needs to make that decision, because we've kind of given our superintendent a mixed message here. She has come back with what we asked for from the committee for options, and I said it was putting the cart before the horse, not saying that she didn't do what she was supposed to do. But we need to decide as a board, okay, are we satisfied that this is the best thing for the kids at R.E. Davis? And then if the board says that, hey, I say, by all means, take this money and use it in other areas, but I think we need to have a serious discussion about that. And we have some people in the community that feel very strongly that the board made this commitment to them. When Maywood schools closed and we came up with the college prep idea with R.E. Davis. So I don't want to send a message to that community that now all of a sudden, hey, that's not important anymore, we can continue to use Maywood. And the other image was we were trying to get away from having any connection with Maywood because it was closed.
And if you sell.
And it's for sale. So if you take that into consideration, you know, and let's say we do sell it, where are we gonna let them play at Chestnut Oaks? Yeah, and I know it's a small number of kids involved, and Dr. Martin Knox had reported this to us earlier, not just tonight, but she reminded us tonight that she had polled from the principal, and we got a very small number. And there was some concern about what we needed to do to build the numbers. But like I say, I have no problems whatsoever with us repurposing the money, but I just want to be sure as a board we've decided this is what is best for R.E. Davis, and we're gonna move on to put this money in other areas. And if we're gonna continue with that, then if we ever do sell the property at Maywood, then that would create a problem for us to find a place for those kids to play there in athletics. So that's my main concern is, have we decided unequivocally as a board that we are going to abandon these things that we had delegated for R.E. Davis?
Thank you.
Mayor?
Yes.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with all the discussion that's taking place here to make sure we hold true to what we promised the community. However, I don't want anybody to believe that I just went and made up two options to come back to this table to discuss. We as a team continue to have this dialogue, and we never, and I repeat, never touch those monies for any other purpose other than the discussion with the board. And so we came up with the two options. We can dispose of them. I mean, it was just a directive, and so we did it. Well, I did it.
I would, just one second. I would not dispose of the options that you're presenting. However, I agree with Dr. Baker and the others. We need to sit down and really talk about this and make some concrete decisions as to how we want to move forward. I don't think you need to destroy this because your work shouldn't be in vain, because you have put time and effort into getting this done. So we need to hold on to this, but then we need to sit down and seriously talk about what it is that we want, whether or not what we have at R.E. Davis truly suffices. And looking at what we actually initially promised, what has been done, what hasn't been done, because, you know, very little of this would be allocated for R.E. Davis. And I think I saw Brian hand first.
I was going to ask a question, and I'm not sure if Dr. Martin Knox can answer this, and maybe go to Dr. Hilton or Reverend McGaney or yourself, Madam Chair. When the money was allocated for land, I'm not sure of the distance between R.E. Davis and Maywood, but is it even feasible to get a stadium closer to R.E. Davis than Maywood is to R.E. Davis currently? I'm not sure if that was even explored. I mean, if we're going to find land to build a new stadium, I would think that it would need to be closer than the current stadium in which they are.
Let's table this for right now, and let's talk about this later, but there is land. So let's, is your question?
I just want to say something.
Yes.
I just want to remind everybody that this did not come as a surprise tonight. This was brought up at our last meeting, and everybody heard the recommendations of the Finance Committee. And, you know, I just, so you know, Dr. Martin Knox did not just come up with this. We did ask for it, and it was with this board. That was part of our recommendation from the Finance Committee. So this was discussed or presented at our last meeting.
Thank you for making that known. But we are aware that this did not just come and was pulled out of the sky, that it was asked for We do appreciate that, and, let's just take this up, when will it be a good time for further discussion of this thing?
If that's, the wishes of the board to be an agenda item on the next, board meeting,
The next board meeting?
or
That's,
the next work session.
so that is March, that would be the second, that would be the fourth, Monday night.
If you did it at the work session, it would be the fourth Monday in March. It would be the 22nd.
And I think it needs to be an executive session.
Unless you go across the street behind it.
Okay. So, do you think it's the fourth Monday night?
Yes, ma'am.
In
It could be the
exec-
8th or the 22nd. It'll be at you could say the one of the March meetings.
Yeah, one of the March meetings, it would be discussing executive session.
Could
Yes,
it not
sir.
be discussed at our next meeting?
Well,
That's in March.
Huh? The first meeting in March?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so we'll put that on there for the executive session portion. Okay, thank you. So we will, table the conversation until the next meeting in executive session concerning, the options that were presented today and make a decision as to what we're going to really do as far as R.E. Davis is concerned and the property. Okay, thank you so much. That's your.
Yes, ma'am, I'm sorry, that concludes the tour of Sumter, this work from Superintendent.
And I'd like to thank those of you that presented this evening as well as Dr. Martin Knox for the report that you provided for us. Thank you. And we are now at the portion of the meeting that calls for the board to enter into executive session. On behalf of the board, I want to take this opportunity to thank everyone for their interest in Sumter School District. And there is no designated time or length of time that we will be in executive session. However, if you are unable to be with us upon our return to open session, we thank you for your support and we wish you a great week. Is there a motion to enter into executive session?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we enter into executive session for receipt of legal advice where the legal advice relates to pending, threatened, or potential claims, discussion of proposed property contractual matters, discussion of proposed contractual matters, and discussion of personnel report, employment, appointment, compensation, promotion, demotion, discipline, transfer, termination, and or release of an employee.
Second.
There is a motion and a second that the board entered into executive session for the receipt of legal advice, where the legal advice relates to pending, threatened, or potential claims, discussion of proposed property, contractual matters, discussion of proposed contractual matters, and discussion of personal report, employment, appointment, compensation, promotion, demotion, discipline, transfer, termination, and or release of an employee. Is there any discussion? Please cast your vote electronically. The motion passes unanimously, and the board is now in. Upon consensus, the board is now in open session. We do not have any items for consensus, so we're now down to the closing of the meeting. And again, I'd like to say that we appreciate your presence and ask that you continue to be safe, practice physical distancing, and wear your masks. Have a blessed enjoyable week. With no further business, I would like to say this meeting is adjourned at
9:20.
9:20 p.m. Thank you.